Hello, everyone. This is Kate Bailey from Minnesota Communities Caring for Children. We are just going to give it another minute or two here before we start today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. And we'll just let a few more people kind of trickle in, and then we'll get started. All right, well, I think we can probably get started here. I will turn things over to Jackie. I know that I think if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them in the questions box. And then at the end, there will be an opportunity for question and answer with Jackie, at which time, if you have a question, you can type it into the question box, or I'm able to unmute you also, so we could have maybe a little bit more of a conversation at the end. And with that, I will turn things over to Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jackie Crawford, as you see on the screen there, and I am with Lakeland Mental Health Center. My office is in Moorhead, Minnesota. One of the things that I do is I work with the Mobile Mental Health Crisis Response Program, a three-county crisis response program that we have our little cow there to represent us because it's with Clay, Otter Tail, and Wilkin counties. And this is going to be relevant to this discussion on conceptualizing resilience later on in the discussion. Anyway, I liked our little cow. I think she looks pretty resilient. So I'm happy to be talking to you today about how we conceptualize resilience. Resilience involves the ability to make positive adaptations to environmental stress and to maintain psychological health despite exposure to adverse circumstances, which we all have at one point or another in our life. Psychological theorists and researchers have conceptualized resilience in a variety of ways. They think of them as stress protective factors and attributes. They think of them as a process of developing skills and strategies, so it's not something we are born with, it's something we can learn. And as a way of coping with adversity. They also conceptualize them as a way to motivate yourself to make it through difficulties. A common way for resilience to be conceptualized is the ability to bounce back or to bounce back and adapt from difficult experiences. Resilience can also be thought of as the capacity to withstand adversity and sustain emotional and physical well-being in the face of challenging experiences such as natural disasters and with crises and developmental challenges. So resilience is really pretty important regardless of what our experiences are. Because being resilient is important overall, the more easily one can recall concepts of resilience, the more readily those resilient behaviors can be enacted. This webinar is about one organization's conceptualization of resilient practices and how resilient conceptualizations can benefit both individuals and community resilience. Often the development of resilient skills comes from having adverse or chronic toxic stressors. In the Red River Valley, that stressor comes in the form of repeated floods. The past 2 decades have reflected a wet cyclomatic cycle in the Red River Valley, causing 20 consecutive annual floods, compared to 29 floods in the preceding 90 years. The most detrimental was in 1997, which resulted in the largest pre-Katrina disaster evacuation in U.S. history, with an economic cost exceeding $3.5 billion, with a B, costs. Also relevant to this discussion are the ACEs studies, where resilience is seen as an antidote to toxic stress that develops from ACEs exposure in childhood. It's a developmental process, often learned, and resilience is also learned in a relational way. Resilience can be improved upon when we know we have others we can turn to for help and count on to nurture and to respond in a competent way to our needs. In 2009, when the Fargo-Moorhead area was faced with another potentially catastrophic flood, the recommendations of the Corps of Engineers were that the city of Fargo prepare for evacuation. The community, which was experienced with facing floods, responded, and instead of evacuating, the people remained hopeful. They remembered their past successes and they acted on them. They acted together. Some of them this is Sandbag Central in Fargo. Some of them acted by coming to the Fargo Dome and filling and stacking sandbags for diking, while others around them were responding by helping the sandbaggers remember to take drinks for water and rest and get a bite to eat. So together they were fostering a spirit of meaning and purpose in the face of an overwhelming disaster. It was in this period of the building for the response to the 2009 flood that Red River Resilience was formed. It was and is a consortium of people and organizations coming together for the specific purpose of building resilience, one person at a time. They used research-based concepts to educate the community and to counter the emotional toils faced by the impending flood. The goals of Red River Resilience were really threefold. First, it was to develop a message that was accessible, one that could be easily understood and with which people could relate. Second, they wanted to ensure that the message could be easily recalled in memory, because when people are highly stressed, they have trouble remembering things, as we can all probably identify with. And lastly, they wanted that message to be flexible, something that people could take and make their own. And that's because each of us experiences stress and each of us experiences resilience in different ways. What makes me hopeful is going to be very personal and probably or could be very different from what you or anyone else feels is hopeful. The message that was developed was put into an acronym, 5 basic concepts that spelled the word facts, with 3 basic ideas associated with each letter of the acronym. It was designed to promote the skills that we have, because everyone has times when we don't do well, when the world just seems to be crashing down on us. The concepts were designed so that both children and adults could understand them. So they're not only good for everyone, but they help us to model resilience for others, so we can show our friends and our family what resilience looks like. So indeed, it's relational. Having an easily accessible resilience tool is critical when we think about having multiple ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, can make it difficult to be resilient. Recent data on the impact of ACEs and homelessness demonstrates this pretty well. There was a research study that looked at a community where they had members 25 to 54 years of age, and they asked them how many ACEs categories they had. When they categorized that information, they found that these community members who had 0 to 1 ACEs had a 3 out of 100 chance of having a history of homelessness. However, when the same group had 6 to 8 ACEs categories, there was a 1 in 3 chance they had a history of being homeless. That's a huge difference. Think about it. People were more likely to experience homelessness because they had in their childhood a high number of toxic experiences. So these people have an urgent need to be and build resilience. So in our community, it made good sense to take the facts of resilience to the homeless. One young woman, seen in the bottom left-hand corner of this picture here, Jen Enquist, decided that people living at Churches United might benefit from knowing about ACEs, about how resilience and how they are resilient is something they have in spite of their toxic stress experiences in childhood. It made good sense to also take the facts to the sheltering churches option that we have when in this area of the country the weather is so cold that people can die if they don't have a place to stay. When Jen, I'm going to back that up just a minute. When Jen did this, what she did is she had an open group. Anybody could attend at the shelter, and she told them about ACEs. She told them that this is something that could influence what happened to them in adulthood. And when she told them that, the way that she told them was in a sense of amazement. How is it that each of you can be so resilient in the face of all those difficulties, and that kind of history, which gave everyone in her group a sense of hopefulness, resilience. And in personal conversations, what she told me was that it made a difference in the overall atmosphere at the shelter, that residents started talking to other residents about being resilient and, hey man, you're pretty strong for what you've been through. And it helped each one of those people who attended her group to think about their future in a more positive way instead of being overcome and shamed by the fact that they are now living in a homeless shelter. Another kind of community presentation that we have done involved the Operation Military Kids Family Camp. The facts were presented here because military families face routine separations and other stressors that other families do not. To make the facts kid-friendly, the presenters made learning the facts interactive by accommodating parents and children of all ages. They did this by taking beach balls, and you see one of those behind the facts representation here in your picture, and each family got a beach ball. What they were asked to do was to blow up the beach ball partway and then bounce it, and to see that it didn't bounce very well. Kind of as an analogy to when we're not very resilient, we have difficulties bouncing back. And then they were asked to blow the beach ball up the rest of the way and watch what happened. Again, with the analogy being, if you're resilient, you have the capacity to bounce back much more easily. After the families blew up their beach balls, they were given markers, and they were asked to draw on different parts of their beach ball representations of how their families used the facts, how they fostered hope, how they acted with purpose, how they connected with others, took care of themselves, and searched for meaning in their families. The families had fun, the kids were engaged, and as a result, they learned how to think about how everyone was able to cope in new ways. The last example I would like to talk with you about is how we in the COW, or the Clay Otter Tail Wilkin Mobile Crisis Team, use the facts of resilience on our mobile dispatches. When a person calls the crisis line and the crisis team goes to meet with them, the first things that happen are that the person tells their story to the crisis team and the team listens. While that in itself is important and may seem pretty logical, it is what happens next that really is equally important. Embedded in each person's story, whether they're aware of it or not, are strengths. Oftentimes, people don't even recognize that when they're talking about their crisis, they're revealing their strengths. And so it becomes part of the process for our crisis dispatch team members to tell them what they heard about their resilience, about their strengths. When they do that, it's in my experience, that the person will look at them with a sense of, wow, did I say that? For example, I can remember one young woman who was suicidal and was talking about how she didn't think there was any way out of her dilemma. And in the course of the conversation, revealed that she was going to school and that she had hopes to graduate in a year. And so it gave our team members an opportunity to say to her, wow, even though things are so disparate for you that you're not even sure you want to live, you're telling me that you have hope for your future. And she really was kind of astounded that, yeah, I had said that. Once that conversation is done, once the story is told, The team and the person who is experienced the crisis work together to do an assessment. And part of that assessment is writing down the definitions, the particular things that that person thinks they do in each of the 5 categories of resilience. So to have a discussion so that it becomes real for them, that they do have these capacities and they do have ways of responding to crisis without giving in to despair. Once they get that assessment done, then the next step is to develop a crisis treatment plan. And although it's not always the case, one of the things that our team members look for are to ask the person those things that you do to promote your own resilience. Are there things there that you think might help you next time you experience this kind of crisis? So, as you can see from these examples, hopefully, the facts have broad applicability in coping with a variety of crises, of disasters, and of developmental difficulties. There are many ways that the facts of resilience have been used. It's been translated into 7 languages: Bosnian, Arabic, Somali, Nepali, Kurdish, Spanish, and then of course English. And those translations had to do with the kind of second language speakers that we have in the Fargo-Moorhead area. The facts have also been presented across the world, including in China, Chile, and most recently in England at a international resilience conference. There is a website, redriverresilience.com, as you can see at the bottom of your screen there. And that website has many resources available for free to anyone who might be interested in exploring those, including some very nice spiritual resources that were developed by one of the pastors who are in the Red River Resilience community. I have my own ideas of why this simple but powerful conceptualization has had such broad reach and widespread popularity, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Do you see areas in your life or in your community where the facts could be beneficial? Do you see ways that you think you might like to use some of the materials that you have heard of today or that you might access on the website? People across the globe are joining together to prioritize a shared vision of building a community's emotional resilience. And they're using the facts, and they're doing this one person at a time. I realize that this presentation has not gone quite as long as the time that I have, but I believe that the concepts that I have presented here adequately tell you about what the basic facts message is. We also have brochures available that really spell out, and we have presenters available that can go into more detail about the facts of resilience if anybody is interested. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions, or is there any discussion about that now?
Jackie, this is Kate.
Yeah.
So someone's wondering if they can get a copy of some of the materials you're talking about. I'm wondering maybe we could send something out to everyone who attended today, or should folks reach out to you directly for resources?
If they want a copy of this presentation, I'm happy to send that to them. So I don't know what the best way to accomplish that is, Kate. They might also really want to take a look at River Resilience, because there is a PowerPoint, another PowerPoint specific to the facts on that website. There are brochures available to be downloaded. there's a whole array of different resources there. So I guess that would be the first thing that I would suggest. But if people are interested in this specific presentation, I can change it to a PDF and send that to you, or you can let me know if there's a better way to do that.
Okay, that sounds great. Are there any other questions that people have? Feel free to type it in the questions box again, or you have a little hand function, so you can click on that and you could raise your hand and I could unmute you so you could speak. Okay, it looks like we've got a question. The question is, I understand and have a deep interest in this topic. However, I wonder if it is fair to ask young people to have to be so resilient.
Well, resilience is something that we build, hopefully from the time that we are infants or even prenatally. So conceptualizing it for them is a way for them to understand what it is that they need to do in order to help them make it through their difficulties. And then they maybe already are doing it, they just need someone to help them put it into words. And the reason for this particular conceptualization is because, like I stated earlier, when we are overwhelmed, when we are in the midst of difficulties that maybe we've never experienced before, developmentally that happens all the time, having an easy way to think about what do I do next so these difficulties don't continue to overwhelm me, or things that we can do throughout our lifespan. It's just needing to present it in a developmentally appropriate way.
Great. There are some other questions asking if you could maybe explain a little bit more about the beach ball activity.
Okay.
Someone's asking what were the topics the family wrote about on the ball, how they fostered hope, how they took care of themselves, and she missed the others.
Okay, so the acronym FACTS stands for, one is fostering hope. So the families at the military kids camp were asked to draw pictures about what makes them hopeful. And it really was not so important what they chose to draw as much as it was for them to share, to come together as a family and say, this is what we decided, and then to share with the other families, this is what we drew on our beach ball. So it might be a picture or a little stick figures of their family watching a movie or going to the beach or playing kickball or softball, an activity that demonstrated that this is what makes them feel hopeful. It could be, when I get a letter from my mom or my dad who's in the service and is not with me, something that demonstrates that F for fostering hope. The A, in fact, stands for acting with purpose. And I realize I didn't go into a whole lot of detail with this, probably because I didn't want to bore anybody, and I also knew that there is more detail on the website in case anybody is interested. But the A stands for act with purpose. And here what we're talking about is not some long-range goal, but when you're in a crisis or when you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to know what you're going to do in the next 5 to 10 minutes to help yourself start to kind of de-escalate and to get better in control. So it might be that I am going to paint my fingernails if you're a little girl, or I'm going to play with my dolls, or I'm going to go talk to my friend, which is appropriate for any age. Something that you need to do right away. That's what Act with Purpose stands for. The other thing that they put on their beach ball is connect with others. And while I didn't mention this earlier, what recent research in the ACEs has shown is that this, of all the ways of being resilient, is the one that ends up being most important. And that is connecting with competent and capable adults. So we want them to put on their beach ball some little drawing that shows what it is that helps them feel better, more resilient, that involves connections with others. The T in the facts, the resilience of facts, is standing for take care of yourself. And research really does not support this as one of the ways that we are being resilient, but it makes pretty logical sense that we would need to do this. So taking care of yourself is remembering that we are not Energizer buddies all the time and that we need to recharge our batteries. We do that by taking a break from things that are difficult and maybe going for a walk or doing something else that's enjoyable. We do that by remembering to sleep. Most important of our ways of being resilient when you take care of yourself is sleep. Eat nutritional foods and getting exercise. These are all pretty common understandings of how we take care of ourselves. But also included in this category is thinking about our own spirituality, not religion, but how we conceptualize a higher power. Not everybody believes in that. For those people who do, that ends up being really important also. The last of the 5 concepts is search for meaning. And this one was probably for our kids the most difficult to draw a picture for because it is so abstract. But in long-term resiliency, when we're looking years down the road, this is the one that ends up being most important. It's the ability to look back on difficulties that we have had and say, yes, I have benefited from them. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I know that I am a stronger person, a more compassionate person. I have a broader idea of my own strengths because I have been through this difficulty. And that's what Search for Meaning goes for. And so that's what the people, these families at the kids camp were asked to do, is to take each one of those concepts, try to think about how it applied to their family to help them all as a family have a shared conceptualization of resilience and then share it with other families who are present.
Any other questions? We had a question. Could you say again the website? Jackie?
Yes. Let me see if I can go back to that place on the screen so you can see it. Here it is.
Perfect.
Down at the bottom, it's Red River Resilience altogether.com.
Okay, and it looks like we've got a question from Denise, and I'm going to try to unmute you here, Denise. Let's see if this works. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you.
Okay, so I really like the way that you break this down so that we can use it with children, with teens, with adults, even with my staff. When they hit crisis, they tend to come to me as strength. But I'm wondering, are there any specific ways to tweak the concept when dealing with teens or adults who are addicts or recovering addicts?
So to me, Denise, the idea is that you ask people, how have you made it through the difficulties you've been through? How? And if they don't know, to ask them to recall, do you remember a time in your life when you've had a difficulty and you believe you were able to make it through? How? Can you recall that? Can you tell that story? Because it is through those narratives, those stories, even though they may not be able to name them, that you, as someone wanting to help them, might be able to identify, here's what I heard you say.
Pointing out the strengths.
Pointing out the strengths, exactly.
So just like when I'm talking with someone about improving their parenting, for example, I point out the things I see that they're doing well.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like we've got a question from Gloria. So Gloria, I'm going to try to unmute you here. Okay, are you there?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question was, do you have any local training for people who work with, for us, we work with college students? And do you have any local training sessions that, to give us, this website is great, but some other hands-on training that we could come to kind of work with the students and know how to better help them through, how to be more resilient?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to talk with you about that. The group Red River Resilience is really just a bunch of people who care about their community. And so when we're asked these questions, can you come and give a presentation, it's more like who has time, who has expertise in the area that the person asking has an interest. And so what I would probably do is go back to the group and say, I have somebody who works with college-age people, and they're wondering whether or not we can come and do a presentation. So that's the process that we have used. It's not an organized nonprofit. It's just a group of people. So I know if that seems to fit for you, I think we can talk more about that and maybe figure out a way to have that happen for you.
Okay, it looks like we've got another question from Julie. Julie's question is, how would you wrap up a conversation or activity? Would you review the act with purpose part to send them out with a goal?
So what you're asking is, how do we put these concepts into action? And to me, it really is depending on what your audience is there for. So if at the beginning you can say, at the end I'd like you to think about, or you can wrap up into your presentation if you have somebody presenting or you want to present it yourself, that you want them to get together as a group and give them a scenario. That's one way of doing it. You can do a scenario and let's work together and think of how we're going to put these concepts into action. I guess my preference is to have each of them write down on a piece of paper. They don't have to share it with anybody, but just write down what's one way that you currently use these concepts, and if you want to grow and be more resilient, is there one area that you can promise yourself, nobody else, promise yourself you will try to do better with in the next couple of days? And the next couple of days are important because we're not setting them up for a lofty goal, kind of like we do at New Year's. I'm going to lose that 10 pounds. Yeah, right. We're going to go out and exercise. Love to have it happen. But we're going to give them something immediate. And so if they can practice on the next couple of days, it might be then that they will carry it forward.
Are there any other questions that anyone has? Give people a chance to type just in case they're typing in a question. I'm not seeing any others.
Okay.
Well, if you think of anything, feel free to ask questions. Send them to me or to Jackie. And is there anything else you want to close with, Jackie? Or
just thank you for the opportunity, Kate, and I'm happy to help out in any way that others might feel would be helpful.
Great. I'm getting some awesomes and thanks to you in the question box, Jackie. I will send out, there will be an evaluation, and we can send out Jackie's presentation as a PDF to you after this webinar. And we thank you so much for joining and hope you can join some of our other webinars that we're offering in the next several months. So thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.